Hello and welcome to Good Evening Britain, a Force for Good's weekly show coming to you live from our studios here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow, with me, your host, Alistair McConnachie. We are broadcasting on all our digital platforms throughout the United Kingdom and across the world. We're bringing you quality pro-UK comment and analysis every Wednesday from 7 until 8 p.m. on Facebook, on YouTube, on X, and on TikTok. Folks, we've got a great show for you lined up tonight. We've got our guest coming in at the bottom of the hour, Damien Davies from Cheshire Cat Musings YouTube channel. This is the second time that Damien has been on the show, and Damien is bringing us some inside knowledge tonight because he lives in the constituency of Runcorn and Helsby, and he was an activist for reform. And of course, if you've been following the news, as all our viewers do, you will know that Reform won that by-election. So we'll be getting the inside gen from Damien tonight. Really looking forward to that. Not only are we going to be talking about the Runcorn and Helsby earthquake, but we'll also be talking about the news today that a latest opinion poll shows that the Reform UK party are on course to become, wait for this, the second biggest party at Holyrood next year. The Holyrood elections next year are 1 year from today. They're on the 7th of May 2026, exactly 1 year from today, and Reform is projected to be the second biggest party. How could that be? How could that happen? Is it really true? We certainly live in very interesting, intriguing, and surprising political times. So anything is possible. We'll be talking about all of that with our guest at 7:30. Before then, we're going to be taking a look at the new Indian trade deal, which has been setting the basmati rice alight tonight and yesterday, as far as visas to the United Kingdom are concerned. And we're going to be looking at what that's all about as well. And so a packed show, an interesting show, lots to talk about, lots to think about, lots to explain as always, because we always like to bring you value. We're not only about regurgitating the news, we also like to help explain the news, put it into its proper context. So folks, just one thing that you can do for the show as well is, if you're watching on Facebook, please give us a thumbs up and please give us a share. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that thumbs up and please do subscribe to us. That really does help. And if you're watching on X, give us a like and give us a repost, please, because if you can do those things at the start of the show, that helps send it out, helps the algorithm to realize that people are watching, helps the system send more viewers our way. So please get sharing and liking, folks, and leaving your comments and sending in your comments, your greetings, your questions, and we'll do our best to read them out. And thank you to everybody that's watching on TikTok. Let's say hello to a few people here. Debbie was first in tonight. She says, good evening. Missed last week as I was away, and it's good to be back watching. It's good to have you watching, Debbie. Derek says, happy VE Day week. Hope for those who are lucky enough to be off tomorrow to commemorate VE Day. And he adds, it's shocking in this day and age that all companies are not giving staff time off to commemorate. Indeed. And Derek says he's going to be making sure he'll be telling staff to pay respect at 11 a.m. to honour the soldiers who gave up their today for our tomorrow. Good for you, Derek. Oksana says, hi, hope you're well. Hope you're well too, Roxana. Hello to Anthony and to Paul from White Cliffs country in this special week. Preston Journalist says, SNP or Labour, the devil or the deep blue sea. Anas Sarwar, the Labour leader, is as incompetent as Starmer. He's killed any chance of the SNP being toppled from power. Christopher says, good evening from a soon-to-be reformed Falkirk. Hi to Catherine, and Anthony there has shared the broadcast. Thank you, Anthony. We do appreciate you doing that, and we appreciate those who help us to get the message out. Well, let's go back to VE Day. That's tomorrow, and you'll notice our flag VE Day 1945 to 2025, 80 years. And we commemorate VE Day. We must say we don't do it from a jingoistic fashion. We do it in order to remember the loyalty and the sacrifice of those who served during World War II, and especially those who paid the ultimate price. And that's always worth remembering. It's always important to remember these things as well, and often to remember it in order that those kind of wars can be avoided again in the future. I have noticed, though, that the mass media, the British newspapers, they tend to remember these events in order to encourage people to keep fighting, basically. There was a ridiculous set of headlines on Monday, on the beginning of VE Day week. The Daily Mail said, quote, major terror plot by Iran, inside commas, is foiled, that's what you might call a dog whistle to get people to think of Iran as a future enemy of the UK. And not to be outdone, the Express urged us all not to give up our Ukraine support. So you've got two major national newspapers. They're really, really pushing modern conflicts upon the British people, modern foreign conflicts as well. So you've once got to be kind of conscious that the mass media will do that. They'll try to use any national event in order to promote their perpetual war agenda, which the mass media, the big financial interests and the foreign interests have. But for our part, we remember the sacrifice of often our parents' generation or our grandparents' generation, who often paid the final price. So that's tomorrow, VE Day, Victory in Europe Day. Now, the war did rage on, of course, for another 3 months or so until Japan was defeated in the Far East. But certainly many soldiers came home in that period, but many were still out elsewhere fighting on. So that's starting on a rather somber note, I must say. On a more colourful note, let's have a look at the activism which we did this week, because we took this flag out and we flew it at a couple of street stalls. One on Saturday here in the great British city of Glasgow. That's us. That's 6 of our 9-man team who were out on Saturday. Thank you to everybody who came to help with the table. And thank you to everybody who came up to the stall. Many people to say how much they enjoyed seeing the British flags flying. That's a good one. And there's our 2 flags that we had. The VE Day flag, which is now behind me, and our branded AFFG flag. Okay, and I like that one. That's a dynamic picture of the VE Day flag in motion. And I have to say, I think that's one of the most colourful flags that we've flown. It really did grab the attention of people. I think it's that just massive white V in the centre there really does set the flag off nicely. And you could see it from one end of Argyle Street to the other. There we go. That's one of our fellows there in full effect, dealing with the public as the flags fly nicely above. Okay. Close up of folk at the stall. Everybody's always intrigued to know who we are. If they don't already know, we do get a lot of people coming up and saying, "Oh, I saw you," or I follow you on Facebook, or follow you on Instagram, or follow you on Twitter. We get a lot of that now, I'm glad to say. Okay. And I quite like that one as well. That was from our stall on Sunday, which was in a different part of Glasgow. Good. Excellent stuff there. Excellent stuff. Again, thanks to everybody who was there. And of course, what we also did was we counted the Scottish Nationalist March, the group all under one banner. They're very much a shadow of their former selves, but they still have 3 marches a year. They have one in Glasgow every May bank holiday. They have one in Stirling every Bannockburn day, and they have one in Edinburgh just for the sheer sake of it. And of course, they always exaggerate their figures. They claimed there was 5,000 out on Saturday. We had our spy filming them and then counting them. And we didn't count 5,000 or 4,000 or 3,000 or 2,000 or even 1,500. We counted 1,375. And you can check out that figure for yourself if you go to aforceforgood.uk/ nope, don't go there. Go to youtube.com/UK A Force for Good, and you'll find that video. And your count will be within 1 or 2 percentage points of ours of that. I have absolutely no doubt. So we're continuing to do that very important work. There's our address there, youtube.com/UK A Force for Good. We've got so many videos on there now, so many videos, all quality, all good. Please do give us a subscribe if you can on there. Now, send in comments, folks. Send in comments. Clive here says that there's a petition on the UK government parliamentary petition site, which you can Google. And the petition is "Shut the Migrant Hotels Down." So just Google that and you'll get to it. It currently has 45,000 signatures. Sign it, please, and reshare it all over the UK. I know Clive is trying to get 100,000 people signing it. If he gets that, then it will go to Parliament and there'll be a debate on the matter. Kathleen says something which I don't know about. She says YouTube have hypnosis trailers directed at young people now. That doesn't sound too good. Janet Fox is loving it. Hello, Connor says, hello, people of Great Britain. Hope you're doing well today, Connor. And Pipsicles looking in from Edinburgh. Bugsy Malone sends in a nice comment. He says, you've been a true British patriot all your life, my friend. You are a force for good. Nice comment. Thanks, Bugsy. Looking for other comments here. Umad Orokov says, save Europe. Bugsy says, vote for the Homeland Party any chance you get. Well, we're interested in all the political parties, and although as an organization, we don't support any particular one per se. So let's, hello to D-Tube, who has sent in a super chat. D-Tube, thank you. Great stuff. Counting and holding them accountable at that march. And that's definitely worth £2, which good old D-Tube has sent in. Folks, if you'd like to send a super chat, you can only do it on YouTube, but there's a little $sign below the video. Search for that and click on it, and you can send in some cash. Just helps us roll along. £2 is always well worth it. Thank you. Good man, D-Tube. Alan says that he loves the flag. There's several VE Day flags out there. I think this is my favorite one. Certainly the most colourful. Eric Simpson says that there was a petition on the parliamentary website that was shut down. A Royal Marine commander was trying to gain awareness about standards being lowered in the Royal Marines in the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Right. Well, talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, let's have a look at this news that broke yesterday afternoon about a trade deal with India. Now, according to that guy on GB News that speaks awfully posh, what's his name? Jacob Rees-Mogg. According to Jacob Rees-Mogg, it's going to mean that we'll get cheaper rice. Well, cheaper rice might be a good thing. I presume it's basmati rice and not Uncle Ben's rice. I prefer Uncle Ben's rice myself, so it's probably not going to affect me too much. Having said that, what's the downside of it? The downside appears to be that the Indians are being allowed to export many more Indians. Now, you wouldn't have thought that was possible, but actually it is. Here's something from the Telegraph website today. The government declined when pushed on Tuesday to say how many Indian migrants would benefit from the concession. The concession being that employers of these Indians will not need to pay national insurance, which will make the Indian employees considerably cheaper than a British citizen would be. That does seem quite wrong, really, doesn't it? Anyway, the Indian government, in a press release, said the figure would be large number of migrants, while critics have argued that the change makes it more attractive for Indian companies to send workers to the UK rather than hire British workers. Now, that's a good point, because it applies, especially from what I understand, it applies to Indian companies which are in the UK. These Indian companies already based in the UK will be able to import Indians and not have to pay national insurance. So, of course, that's going to make them more, well, they're going to import Indians that they don't have to pay national insurance for rather than hire local British workers, aren't they? So it gives them a huge competitive advantage. The UK government admitted on Tuesday it had internal analysis on the numbers affected, but despite growing calls, refused to publish those numbers. And then it just adds here, the number of work visas issued to Indian nationals in 2024, that's outside this scheme, was 81,000. But it is thought only a fraction of those would benefit, presumably going forward from here in out. 81,000 Indians granted work visas in 2024. What on earth are they doing? Also, here we go. Indians are now able to apply for 33 different work sector visas via the Global Business Mobility Visa. Sorry, Indians are now able to apply for 33 different work sectors via the Global Business Mobility Visa, which includes Indian chefs, musicians, and yoga instructors will be able to apply to work in the UK for the first time. Okay. Yoga instructors from India. Indeed, I know that the national economy has been crying out for yoga instructors from India. And I think that's really going to make all the difference between a recession and a depression. The Indian yoga instructors are going to come in and they're going to save the economy. My goodness me, it all sounds ridiculous and wrong. What did Matt Goodwin have to say about this? Well, Matt Goodwin, who sends out a regular newsletter, he's an occasional presenter on GB News as well, he had a lot to say today. He says the deal means that Indian workers who are here for less than 3 years will not pay national insurance tax in the UK. They'll be exempt from the very same tax that Labour just hiked up for British businesses and workers. No matter how Labour try to spin it, this gives Indians major advantage over their British counterparts and will undermine the position of British workers. While Labour ministers are doing the media rounds claiming this is not the case, this misses the key point. As India's press release openly states in black and white, highlighting detail that was strangely absent in Labour's own press release, quote, the exemption is for Indian workers who are temporarily in the UK and their employers from paying social security contributions in the UK for a period of 3 years. And it will, as the Indian press release notes, make their own service providers, quote, significantly more competitive in the UK and, quote, ease mobility for Indian workers being transferred into Britain, as well as their partners and children. So, as he notes here, if you are an Indian company in the UK, you now have a big incentive to undercut British workers. Much like if you are a big firm based in the UK, you already have an incentive to avoid paying British workers higher wages, and instead you can hire low skill, low wage, cheaper migrants that have been flooding the country since 2019. The British economy, he concludes, is being hollowed out and gutted. It is ridiculous as well. And what's worse about it is, while they say it's a temporary visa for 3 years, the visa itself does not specify that it ends after 3 years. So for many, if not most of these people, when their visa ends, they will be able to apply for an extension. They may even be able to switch it over to a study visa. And if they manage somehow, which will probably be quite easy, to stay in the country legally resident with a job or an activity for 5 years, then they will be able to apply for what's called indefinite leave to remain. And when they get indefinite leave to remain, they get access to all the British welfare system, which they won't have access to entirely in the first 5 years. But if they get indefinite leave to remain after 5 years here, they will have access to it. That's the way it works. And so this is happening all the time. And not only will they get all those financial benefits, but as immigrants from the Commonwealth, as we were saying last week, as immigrants from the Commonwealth, they will be automatically from day one able to vote at every single British election, whether local, county, district, devolved, mayoral, or general election. And it just makes me wonder the extent to which many elections, ongoing and in the past, have been swung by the huge numbers of Commonwealth immigrants who are in the country, who are not British citizens, who are simply here on work visas or student visas for a few years, who from day one of arrival in the United Kingdom have been able to vote. And of course, to vote for their own interests, and to probably not, generally speaking, vote for reform. And I know, for example, reform will throw up, we've got an Indian person who's standing for us, or a Sikh person, or whatever. But these people are very much the exception to the rule. Okay. Of those 84,000 who came in 2024, most of them are not going to be voting for the sorts of things that I might be voting for, or you might be voting for. They're going to be voting for whatever serves their own particular political or economic or long-term interests. And that's hundreds of thousands, indeed millions of people in the United Kingdom who should not have the vote because they're not British citizens. They're relying on a well past its sell-by date convention, which dates right back to about 1914, but certainly to 1948, whereby British subjects of the King could vote in this country. And that has to end. It has to end. Hundreds of thousands, millions of people need to be disenfranchised because they should not be entitled to that vote in the United Kingdom anywhere. And that needs to start becoming part of political party policy. Now, we're just about to bring on our guest who's going to talk about reform, actually. Now, if you're on TikTok, you won't see this because it's on the computer here, which you won't be able to see if you're watching on TikTok. But check us out over at youtube.com/UK A Force for Good if you'd like to see Damien Davies. Hello, Damien.
Evening. How are we doing? Are we all right?
Yes, doing very well. And I should imagine you're doing quite well over there at the moment, because viewers, Damien is actually living in the Runcorn and Helsby constituency. And is it right to say that you were an active participant in the election, Damien?
Yeah, I've done some local canvassing for Reform UK in the Runcorn area, and we just pipped it by 6 votes.
6 votes. Absolutely, absolutely incredible. Did you think you were going to win it?
Yeah, I didn't think it would be this close, but yeah, I had little doubt that they were going to get it. The bookies, the smart money was on Reform UK. They were favourites for quite a while, and I'm quite excited. I'm quite excited because it shows, from a psychological point of view, that we can vote for other options. This constituency was only created last year, but the reform movement is strong in the area. And the Runcorn area has only ever voted Labour for at least the past 50 years. So we're talking since 1975. Runcorn itself, regardless of the constituency it was in previously, whether it be Halton, Weaver Vale, has always returned a Labour MP. Now it's not. And that's exciting. From a psychological point of view, there's a lot of people that may be disengaged or disenfranchised, thinking, well, why would I vote if I'm going to get a Labour MP, which is not what I want? So just from a psychological perspective, to see that we've got somebody now in Parliament who's already hit the ground running today on Talk TV and GB News, talking about illegal migration, the detrimental impact it's having on local communities. I'd take that over a backbench Labour MP that doesn't say anything about the subject or isn't even on TV. That's all you usually get in a red wall Labour seat in the north as a backbench MP. He's not too bright, and they just shut up and do what they're told. So it's refreshing to see our new MP, Sarah Poachin, go on and talk about the issues that we need to be talking about, which is the negative impacts of especially the unskilled migration that's been flooded into Great Britain.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a good point. And she certainly raised the profile of that area of the country in ways that another Labour time server could never have done. Now, some people say that Keir Starmer never came up there. Do you think he was just not interested, or what's your explanation for him not making an appearance?
I think it's twofold. I think, first of all, he's a very worldly globalist prime minister. He can't be bothered trifling with a single constituency up in the north, especially one that is going to be pipped to use pipped to lose, shall I say? Sorry, because of his boxer MP that was in this seat decided to deck a constituents. He knew he was going to lose it, or he knew it was going to be very close. And many of his foot soldiers in the constituency were getting the door slammed in the face because he's just that unpopular. Now, I know Labour in Scotland is a bit more nuanced than it is in the north of England. You've got a lot of unionists in Scotland that will vote Labour to keep an SNP out, and I can see that angle from your perspective. However, in the north we don't have that separatist angle to contend with. So there's less nuance here, but you probably have a bit more of a nuance up in Scotland with what you're dealing with the SNP.
Yes, it's a more complex situation up here in Scotland, which we can get to in a minute. When you were out and about, did Reform have like much of a presence? I know they were on the internet, you know, their social media, Nigel Farage and so on's putting out videos every day, but like on the ground, was it visible? Did people have like Reform stuff in their windows, or could you see much of that at all?
Well, apart from my window, I've got a Reform sticker in my window. And every Reform member in the constituency was sent a big poster.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was going to bring it on to show you, but I had a car sticker as well. There's quite a few car stickers, and there's a local presence. Out of the 2 horses in this race, Labour and the Reform team in Runcorn and Helsby, Reform UK was the only one that had a campaign office out of the local shopping centre, which is known as Runcorn Shopping Centre. Labour didn't bother. So it was basically a 2-horse race, and they did have a campaign office. And I've been going to local branch meetings of Reform in February, March, and April. So there is a energy and there is a desire to get something different. Even if Reform aren't perfect, I've got many criticisms of Reform UK. It's refreshing to get MPs that seem to actually be reflecting your views on TV and in Parliament. And that's something that I think Reform UK is doing, has given the voice to the people that have been voiceless. There's essentially two factions of the Labour Party. You've got the working class core vote, the red wall, and many of your Labour constituencies in Scotland would fall into that, the working class people of Great Britain. And then you've got the Islington subset represented by the likes of Stephen Kinnock and Emily Thornberry, who can tweet a picture of the St. George flag, sort of mocking people that are patriotic when they're down campaigning, and think that that's perfectly acceptable. They have disdain for the working class. So there's Labour's got a big issue, and it's basically the disdain for their core votes, plus looking to appease the champagne socialists that seem to be running the party.
Yes. Well, let's take a look at the actual results from Runcorn. And there's the Reform Party at the top there, 12,645, followed by Labour at 12,639. Incredible. Never seen something like close before. And then the Conservatives way down at 2,300, followed by the Greens at the same amount, and Liberal Democrats out of the question, really. And just a kind of gathering of very small parties there at the bottom of it. But yeah, well, that was an amazing thing, because Reform came from basically nowhere.
They did, and it's very much representative of the Brexit vote. Halton in the Brexit referendum in 2016 did vote for Brexit. They did vote for Brexit, and Labour have done everything since the Brexit vote not to honour the Brexit and give us the Brexit that we deserve. If you remember, Keir Starmer was very much against Brexit and wanted a second referendum, and it's very much a reckoning. And what my win in my constituency shows to every single Red Wall MP, it's a shot across their bows, basically, and their voters are going to be looking for something substantial and something meaningful that's different, and that's what we can look forward to. If you look at the result there, it's very, very close. Reform done very well to put on as many votes as they did. And you've got to remember, the general election was only 10 months ago.
Yes.
And no sitting Prime Minister has won a by-election this early in a parliamentary term. And that vote is the closest vote that's been recorded since records began recording the votes in 1945.
Right. Incredible. Well, they also did very well across the rest of England. And we've got a graphic which just shows how many, not that one, this one. Let's get rid of these banners. Reform coming right in at the top there at 677, from basically nothing, I think it was nothing, to 677, making more than the Liberal Democrats, who came in at 370, Conservatives at 319, which is way down, and Labour at 98, which is down 187 seats. So really, Reform thrashed the Tories and they thrashed Labour. And that's where the two parties which their votes appear to have been coming from. Incredible performance, really. And not only that, but if we move to the next graphic here, we'll see that, what does it say? Reform UK swept to victory with 31% of the overall vote, gaining a majority in 10 council areas. Those council areas being Doncaster, which they took from Labour, and 8 councils which they took from the Tories: Derbyshire, Kent, Lancashire, Lincolnshire, Northamptonshire, Nottinghamshire, Staffordshire, and West Northamptonshire, and also Durham, which had no overall party majority. So that's the blue there is the Reform, the orange is the Lib Dems, and the grey is the councils that have no overall control at the moment. So you can see where they've done extremely well there. Okay.
There's a couple of things I'd like to mention about that. The first thing you
Uh-huh.
need to remember is that both the Tories and Labour in Westminster voted to postpone a significant section of local elections this year.
True.
And I think they did that purposely because they wanted to prevent what's been shown here, which is Reform being the top party. And they done it in specifically in areas like Essex and the east of England, where they've got a few MPs, and they thought that if they postponed the elections locally, that they could stop what happened last week, which is headlines: Reform largest party, which is
Yes.
exactly what's happened. And the second thing I'd like to counter with, or the second thing I'd like to bring up is, I've always seen local elections not as an irrelevance personally, because I've always voted in local European and UK elections. However, a lot of wannabe politicians, I think, don't take local issues seriously at council level. What I actually think is that they see it almost like a stepping stone to becoming an MP, climbing that greasy political pole. So Reform have a unique opportunity here. And what they could actually do is they could improve local services, improve local delivery of things on the ground. And if you can show that and demonstrate that they're also saving money by removing waste such as DEI initiatives where possible, and also maybe there's a lot of local initiatives in England. I don't know if it's the same up in Scotland, but in England there's a lot of local initiatives where councils will spend funding on refugees and give them like free gym access or free driving lessons and things like that, and that comes out of local council funds. So if Reform UK can put a stop to that wastage as well, and they can say, listen, this is what you're going to get when you get Reform, these are all positive signs, and these are things that they can do that they're going to have control of on a local level. And the third thing, finally, I'd like to say is they've already made a declaration that only flags that are going to be on council buildings are going to be the flag of St George, because they won in England, and the Union Jack. Now, they have made concessions to say that the initial tweet that they put out on X didn't say that they're going to fly county flags or county regimental flags for the military, but they've considered that that will happen. And obviously, if they won elections in Wales on the local level, it will be the Welsh flag. And obviously, up in Scotland, it wouldn't be the St George's flag. It would be the St Andrew's flag. So obviously, there are going to be nuances and concessions. And if the king ever visited the council chambers, then obviously the royal standard would have to go up instead. So there's obviously going to be nuances and whatnot. What they mean is they're not going to have the Palestine flag. What they mean is they're not going to have the trans flag. What they mean is they're not going to have the Ukraine flag on council buildings. That's what they mean. Because flags are meant to unite, not divide. So that's the whole point of a flag. Now, when you've got a Palestine flag, that's divisive, because straight away you're playing Palestine off against Israel.
Well, that's right. I think in these councils, I mean, how the flag flying is just a reflection on who's making up the council. You know, if you've got a council made up of people who are highly sympathetic to a particular social or international issue, then you very often get the flag run up the flagpole for certain days. But it's good to know that at least in these councils, there's going to be a significant majority, hopefully, of councillors who really just put the emphasis, as you say, on the British heritage, whatever that may be and however that may be broken down.
They've also rejected they were meant to be getting the DEI training as part of their induction as new councillors, and they've all rejected it. They've all been told to reject it and not take the training, which is quite funny.
That is funny. That is funny, and that's good. That's good. I think the main thing facing these new councillors is just going to be learning the role, because most of these people, I should imagine, have never really even stepped inside a county chamber before, and so they're going to be quite vulnerable in that way. And of course, the media is going to be watching them like a hawk.
They're going to be very hawkish because they're used to basically having Labour and Tory councillors in, and they just receive the diktats from central government upon high, and they just basically shut up and do what they're told.
Yes,
now, by throwing a third party into the mix, where they've got overall control on all of these councils, they're going to get pushed back to central government, which they've never had.
Yeah. Because in these councils, like if you had some Labour guy or Tory guy or whatever that did something wrong, you never know about it. But if a single Reform councillor puts a foot out of step, makes a mistake with the accounts, does something wrong on a Friday night or whatever, the world is going to know about it. And the world's going to know about it probably forevermore. It'll be written into the history books. That's the way that they deal with these things, is that they shine the light to expose every single person. That's as far as parties that they don't like are concerned. They really just go overboard on trying to smear, essentially, that particular person. So they are going to be up against it. So I wish them the very best.
The very good thing about winning all of these councils, and the very good thing is, it delivers a ground game for Reform UK. It delivers foot soldiers on the ground in all of these areas to campaign for more elections. When the general elections come up in a few years, there's going to be a ground game of councillors and activists and leafleters and everyone like that in those areas. And what you remember is that these are only some of the local council elections. There's going to be more council elections next year. Like my council, which is Halton Borough Council, which covers Runcorn and Widnes, that's up for it next year. And there's going to be more mayoralties. And then obviously you've got the Senedd, and you've also got Holyrood elections next year as well. So,
well, let's talk about these Holyrood elections, because an amazing piece of news came out today. There's been a new poll by Survation, and they have discovered, if you could believe this, and I couldn't really believe it, but it's certainly what the polling is saying, is that Reform are going to be not the fourth or third biggest party in Holyrood, but on current trends, the second biggest party in Holyrood, with more seats than Labour, more seats than the Tories, and more seats than the Lib Dems. And that's how it breaks down at the moment, according to the poll that came out today. The SNP would have 58 seats, Reform would have 21, Labour would have 18, Conservatives would have 13, Lib Dems 10, and Greens 8. And that's an extraordinary thing. Now, to win overall control, SNP would need 65 votes, 65 seats rather. They've got 58 there, but if they joined with the Greens in a coalition, then they'd have 66 seats, which would give the coalition overall control. Okay.
But to get the Reform UK as the official opposition in your assembly is a remarkable achievement. And I think I mentioned this earlier this year on my channel, that they are pegged to do exceptionally well. Maybe not as well as England, but don't write them off. And that you've got to remember that your elections aren't for another year or so. What's going to happen in the next year? They're going to go from strength to strength. I said this as well. I've already been over to the neighbouring constituency next to mine's Runcorn and Helsby, and the neighbouring constituency over the water on the other side of the River Mersey is Widnes and Holyrood. And there's people in that area that are saying that we want a bit of what you've got in Runcorn, which is a Reform UK MP. So it's going to be similar across the board. It's going to be similar to Scotland and England. There's going to be a lot of like-minded people in Scotland. They're going to be looking down at England and say, they're not a flash in the pan. It is possible. If you vote Reform, you are going to get Reform. So when you look at the 21, I think that could easily be 30 by this time next year. Easily, maybe 35.
Well, it's almost like Reform would be doing better in Scotland than they're doing in England, because remember, Scotland is a 5-party system. Tories, Labour, Lib Dems, as SNP Labour, Lib Dems, Tories and Greens, 5 major parties in Scotland. In England, you've really only got the 3, Tories, Labour and Lib Dems. So if reform break through in a 5-party system, it's almost like they're doing better in a way than they're doing in England. If you see my point here. And indeed, John Curtis said in yesterday's National, can't actually see it there, he says, Scottish Labour more vulnerable to reform. And he talks about here, he said, reform's support in Scotland is, quote, essentially concentrated among those people who support the union, adding, quote, reform are therefore primarily taking votes off both the Conservatives and Labour. Indeed, Labour seem to be more vulnerable to reform north of the border than south of the border. So that's very interesting. And he added, quote, at the moment, there seems little prospect of any of the other unionist leaders being in position to try to create an administration either with or without reform. In other words, they're going to have to work with reform, whether they like reform or not at the moment. And that polling, again, as you say, it's probably only going to go one way, and that's up.
But here's the thing as well, what you need to factor in as well is, say, for example, I still predict, okay, my prediction is that they are going to win the Senedd, they are going to win the Welsh Parliament or the Welsh Assembly next year. They will pip it, and they will become the opposition to the SNP in Scotland.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's what I personally think is going to happen in the devolved administrations. They're going to pip the Senedd in Wales and Cardiff.
Wow.
And they are going to become the opposition to the SNP in Scotland.
That's incredible if they did those two things.
If you can consolidate that with maybe another 10 county councils in England before the next general election, that's a heck of a ground game for the next general election in 2028, 2029, compared to the decimation of the Tories and Labour.
Oh, that would be amazing.
That can only be a good thing.
It would be amazing. I mean, if they won the Senedd, that would just be incredible. But I think they'll do extremely well in the Senedd, one way or the other. There's no question they will do well. To win it would be incredible, though.
Well, to build a party like this from the ground up and not take it for granted. Say, for example, they make a success of one of these councils in England this year, the 10 councils that they've got overall control of. They can go to the voters in Wales and say, well, we're tried and tested now. With one of these councils in England, you're getting more for your money. The immigrants are getting less, if nothing. And then they can go to the voters in Wales and say, listen, this is what you're going to get with Reform UK if we get the Senedd.
Yes.
And they can use that argument as well to like-minded voters up in Scotland as well.
Yes. Big thanks to Bugsy Malone here, who sent in a $4.99 super chat. He says, I'd shut the IKEA flat pack fake parliament in Edinburgh down if I could. And Bugsy, I think there's lots of people who would definitely agree with you on that. So shout out to Bugsy there. Bugsy was watching on TikTok. We ended the stream, or we're still chatting on the stream, but viewers can't see the video interview. And so he came over to YouTube and he's given us a $4.99 super chat. Thanks, Bugsy. You're the man.
I want to be 100% clear on this. I'm pro-union. To me, it's not even a union. The United Kingdom is the country. So it really grinds my gears when people say, look at the act of union, look at this political agreement between Scotland and England. It's not that. It literally fused the two countries together into a single thing. So when people say, the way I see the UK is it's one United Kingdom with 3 separate jurisdictions. England and Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. If you look at the United States, they're 50 states and they've got 50 different legal systems and 50 different jurisdictions. It's quite similar. Obviously, the devolution deal in the United Kingdom is different because we're not a federalised state. It's much more. A lot of people don't realise how small Britain is. We are very tiny.
Oh yeah.
If you look at Britain or the United Kingdom as a landmass, we could fit inside the state of Texas.
Oh, several times. Several times, I think we could fit inside. You're right. Well, regarding Holyrood next year, which is exactly a year today, it's the 7th of May 2026, we're going to get an inkling because on the 7th of June coming up, there is a by-election, a Scottish parliamentary by-election, 5th of June coming up at the Hamilton, Lark Hall and Stonehouse Holyrood constituency. And it's going to be by first past the post, and we'll have an idea of how they do there. And I think we've got the Hamilton from last time. This is at the 2021 Scottish parliamentary election. Now, at the constituency, which are the only results here that we're interested in. So we're only looking at SNP, Labour, Conservative, and Liberal Democrats, and we're only looking at the first 3 columns there. SNP got 46%, Labour got 33%, Conservative 17.5%, and Lib Dems were completely out of the running at just around 3%. Now, if Reform are polling at 20%, let's say they're polling even at 15%, then they're going to come third. And there is a because they'll knock the Conservatives out. The Conservatives will lose votes to Reform. So Reform are going to come straight in there at number 3, which would be a victory in itself. But there's a possibility they could actually come in at number 2 if Labour lose a lot of votes and their 33% goes right down to 25%. The Conservatives lose 5%. I mean, you're looking at Reform perhaps even pipping Labour into second place, which again would be a national, as in British national earthquake politically, and would bode extremely well for Reform as far as next year is concerned. So that's an interesting by-election that's coming up on the 5th of June, just less than a month away now. So that's something to look forward to. But I would put my money on Reform coming third, possibly second.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite an exciting time, I would say, in British politics in general.
Yes.
So for the life of me, Alistair, I really cannot understand how popular the SNP are in Scotland. I really can't. For my money, it's disgruntled Scottish people that just want to troll Westminster.
Yes.
Because if you look at any of the substance behind the rhetoric, there's just nothing there at all.
No.
The Emperor has no clothes.
Yes.
And I don't say that because Scotland can't be separate from the UK. I say that because it shouldn't be separate from the UK. From a political point of view, it'd be like someone cutting off my arm. I don't really understand what I would gain from it. And again, as you know, people who are unionists in England get told by people in Scotland, "Shut up, you're English. Your voice doesn't matter. It's nothing to do with you." That's exactly the type of divisiveness that I will always reject. I would welcome anybody to talk about British politics anywhere in the UK, from the tippy toe of Cornwall all the way up to the Shetland Islands. It's all the same, and
absolutely agree.
And just because I can't vote locally for Shetland councillors, that doesn't mean I don't care about Shetland. And I care as much about Shetland as I do about Cornwall. It's all the same thing.
That's the attitude that we like to hear, Damien. Absolutely. Well, look, we've had a good chat there. Folks, please, if you're on YouTube, give Damien a follow. He's at youtube.com/@ Cheshire Cat Musings, all one word. Damien's putting out content every day now. He's got a good number of people following him. All his videos get lots of views, I should say. Lots of views, thousands of views. Does very well there. So please give Damien a follow. And Damien, we'll have you back on. Thanks very much for your insight. Great to have a man in the field at this particular time. And you've been a great friend of the show. So thanks very much. And I'd love to come back onto your show as well at any time that you'd like to have us.
Well, not a problem. Thank you for being a gracious host. Thank you for allowing me on. And I wish you all the best. Thank you very much. And I hope to speak to you soon.
Great stuff. Okay, Damien. Good night.
Have a good evening.
Fantastic. Good to see Damien Davies of Cheshire Cat Musings YouTube channel. Good stuff. Well, people had a lot to say during Damien's talk there. Some people on the chat saying that reform are the solution, others saying that they're not. Some people wanted to know what reform will actually do. I think time will tell as far as that's concerned. Some people wanting Holyrood to be abolished, others saying that reform are not going to go there as such. But who knows where it will all go, what's happening. I think to Bugsy, I think made the comment somewhere there about moving the Overton window, moving the window of permissible debate, permissible political debate. And that's definitely something that they're doing. And that does worry the system, as it were, by which I mean the people who have lived high on the hog at Holyrood for all these years. If they were suddenly to be confronted with an opposition made up of Reform Party members, it would be pretty funny. And I know there's concerns as well that some people have. Well, is this just letting the SNP in if you vote for another unionist party? Well, these are just the matters of politics that we don't need to get into right now, because this time is the top of the hour. So we're bringing the show to a close. It just remains, though, that please do check out our shop, where you can get such as our wee book for the union, aforceforgood.uk/shop-1. And if you like the work that we do, please do become a monthly supporter for as little as £3 a month, or £5 a month, or 10, or 15, or 20, or 25, or £1,000 a month. Please, I know there's somebody out there that can give us £1,000 a month. We've never received lift-off velocity because of the fact that we simply tick along on a very modest income that allows us to do a lot, but we've never achieved lift-off in the sense of breaking out worldwide, just because of the limitations that we face financially. So if you're somebody that's got a bit of cash, and I know some people do. I was reading a magazine there about a guy that just renovated a house for 45 million, albeit a manor house. I was like, who's got 45 million pounds to renovate a house? People have it. People have it. Hopefully they'll be watching this show. So yeah, and if you'd rather just donate, please do donate, just a one-off, at aforceforgood.uk/donate2, numeral 2. Now, we're going to be back next week. We've got a guest. It's going to be Avelina next week. She's going to be continuing her stories of the British loyalists during the American War of Separation, as we like to call it. So until then, thank you, everybody who sent in your comments. We've had a good chat tonight. We've had a great guest. We've got a great flag behind us. And it just remains for me to say, God bless the United Kingdom and God save the King. See you next week.